camera. Hurry, get it. There it is. All right. So Project ME, what did we do and why does it matter? Project ME for me is really a dream project, the type of thing that a game designer like myself only gets to do once in a lifetime. And it was absolutely amazing. And it's amazing that it happened in the first place. And it's amazing that it's still going to be able to give back to the museums community this way is really an extraordinary gift. And so we thanks to the incredible Max Kohler Foundation, have worked with 8 museums in both Switzerland and the United States to explore prototypes for play-based interactions to start in art museums, but we have also worked with the Landesmuseum, which is an art and history museum in Zurich. And we approached a phased approach to programming. And the idea was we were going to do 30-day prototypes at each of these museums to try and instill this idea of phased programming, user testing, and prototyping to sort of break the perfection mindset that people in museums can sometimes get into, this sense of we can only build it if it's perfect. We can only do it if the schedule is just right. We can only do it if we have all the budgeting. And also instill this culture of playtesting, because of course, no matter how much time or money you put into a project, if it has not been play tested, it is still a prototype. And so the worst case scenario is that you are releasing, 2-year development cycle $1 million prototypes because they've never been tested with your users. So a phased approach was build phase 1 of your project, and then you test and test. And then as you're testing, you apply for funding. And you can apply for small amounts of funding rather than one giant block. If you can get one giant block, amazing, good for your museum. But typically, smaller grants are usually available to nonprofits. And so this concept of like you start small and you test, and then you get a little more funding and you test. Yeah, and sort of testing out this way of approaching things. So we set 30-day deadlines, and at first everybody thought I was kind of insane to even propose this. And I was a little bit insane because after 20 games, let me tell you, I was exhausted. Right? So we built 20 30-day prototypes over the course of 24 months. And we got 20 functioning, unique open source prototypes out of it. And we used this system. We like to set parameters, goals, resources, and restrictions. What do you want out of your project? What can you use to make your project more successful? What do you already have in your pocket, right? Like what you absolutely use this moment. And then restrictions. What should you not do? I always like to say, find out the no's right away, right? Because every no is a gift. Every no takes something right off of your plate. You don't have to think about it, right? Bad Wi-Fi, great. You don't have to do a digital game, right? So you can't use like written instruments in your institution. Great, you're not doing anything that involves writing or drawing, right? So you find these things out ahead of time. And we built and tested these 20 completely unique prototypes. Even looking at this grid all together, it's like, oh my gosh, what what a project it was. And now we're on the next phase of this project, which is we've identified which out of these 20 were the most useful, the most promising, had the best play tests. And we're sharing them with the larger museum community. These are open source, and the Max Kohler Foundation, has these small mini grants to be able to work with museums and also to work with my studio, Fable Vision Studios, to help the museums get their content in there, and also other studios like Jan's studio, Freisicht, to create these content management systems so that museums can put their own content in there. Because we know that open source to just say like, oh, it's so easy, go get it on GitHub, like a lot of museums and especially museum education departments, right? That's just not useful for them, right? So we also have a little bit of funding so you can work with people who know how to access this stuff. Um, and we already have a really wonderful list of partners that are testing the newer iterations of these prototypes. And every time that we work with a new museum, we make little incremental changes. For instance, we worked with SF MoMA, and we had this wonderful game called Grab It. We removed all the buttons, and it's only touch cards now, from the last version that we did with SF MoMA. Um, Musea della, let's see if I can say this. All right, Musea d'Arte della Svizzera Italiano in Lugano. God, I love Italian. Sounds so great, doesn't it? But as we always say, Masi, the Masi Museum in Lugano. This game was initially created with one gallery in mind. Mozzie had multiple galleries. So when we put it in their museum, we changed the code so that you could identify the different galleries. So with each museum that we work with each museum that a game sees, it gets incrementally better and different and has more capabilities. So we would like more and more museums to test these things out so that the projects can get better. So we're going to talk about two projects. Again, we have 20. Um, we have identified out of those 20, maybe 10 that we think are really, really good. But ironically, that's not always what people need. We're working with Bunter Kunstmuseum in Chur right now, or Chur, in Switzerland. I know, I learned how to say that word. And the prototype that they needed was actually one of our paper prototypes that was very simple, and we had not even considered expanding that one, but that's what they needed. So these are examples, but chat with us if some of our examples don't do what you need, and there might be something else that actually fits the bill better for you. So let's talk first about the line collector. So the line collector is near and dear to my heart because we worked with Peter Reynolds, who is a children's book author, very well known in the United States. And he worked with the MoMA Museum in New York City and created all sorts of original art for this, and also let us use the characters from his books. And if you guys know anything about IT, this is a rare and unusual gift to be able to work with the IP of such a famous children's book, especially for a prototype like this. But Peter is part of Fablevision Studios, and he has said if any museums would like to use this IP and this game, that they are welcome to it. We just, need to know who they are. So I can't imagine he would shut us down otherwise, but he does want to know where his IP is being used. This game is a physical digital game. It let visitors choose, collect, and write about different kinds of lines in the gallery, and then put their answers into a kiosk that generated a mini book about their day. So it's actually a relatively ambitious prototype because it had two parts of it. So here's the first part. Made sure to get this picture in here where these kids are looking at the front and we're taking a picture of the back. So we got a good art butt picture there for you. But the first part of this game was just a series of cards that asked visitors questions about lines as they explored the gallery. And as you can see, this particular piece, it's got some really good lines, right? And so we asked for prompts, and this was the MoMA education team that came up with these wonderful prompts. And the first prompt was find a line that seems loud. Which line in the gallery seems loud to you? And then we asked them to make the sound that you think the line might make. And what do you think makes it seem loud? You put the artist's name and the artwork title, and then you can draw the artwork right there. And we had 7 of these challenges. It's a lot of challenges, especially since we're targeting families. But the nice part is that it was nonlinear. And so if the kids want to do 2 or 3 challenges and then they're done, that's fine. And the program still works. The second part of this program was an iPad. We put it in little kiosks that we put around the MoMA, and the users would find a line that looked loud, and then they would go to the kiosk and then they would type in what they found. When they're done, then they press done, and it generates a keepsake for them. So like a little book that they can print out. It's a PDF, mail it to yourself, and you can print it out. Now, again, this is a prototype, and we got just shockingly far, considering that this is literally a 30-day prototype. Like the art for this 30 days, let me just say this is not what a prototype typically looks like, right? Like, this is an especially beautiful prototype, but there were a lot of things that were not finished yet that we would love to add extra things to it. But it really functions nicely. And what we learned was that actually, while both of them functioned well together, you could also separate them and use the cards only or use the kiosks only. We also had imagined that if you really wanted to install this as a really like permanent installation or something that was a sort of a bigger, more attention-getting thing, you could use RFID wristbands to keep track of people, that you could print out the PDF into a little booklet that people could buy at the gift shop or pick up at the front desk. There's a lot of ways that you can really make this into an even bigger deal for visitors. Um, the way that we tracked teams, and I was proud of us for this because it was so simple, but it worked so nicely, is that we just had people create team names. So you go in and you register. I'm going to register. My team name is, Team 10 or whatever. I think I put October 27th test as I was testing this yesterday. So here's my name. And every time I log in, if I say done for now, it goes back to the home screen. And when I go back to the kiosk, then I just put in October 27th test. And again, I can use any of these, right? So I'm going to do challenge 1 or challenge 3, and the cards all have challenge numbers on them, right? So here's challenge number 4. Here's challenge number 6. And so now I'm going to go over here and, oh, I just did challenge number 4 and says, okay, which one did you find? Oh, I wrote it down. Here's the artwork name, and here's the artist name, showing kids how to look at an interpretive panel and find the artist name and find the name of the artwork. And then it's going to ask me questions about it. And again, at the end, you get that nice keepsake where it generates a PDF. And it says, one day Jan, Scott, and Kelly went to the MoMA and they found lines. First they found a loud line. It was loud because, and it puts all of the content in there that they had. And again, we have all this really beautiful custom art, and we had imagined that we could do the shape collector, the line collector, and the color collector with different challenges based on Peter Reynolds' art. So this game has the capability to be even bigger than it is right now. Also, Peter Reynolds does something called Dot Day every September. Literally over 1 million participants. Actually, I think Kelly, the ICA was part of Dot Day this year, wasn't it?
Hugely successful. We were so glad to have.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You're super quiet.
Do better now.
Oh no, I'm sorry, but I
I'll
do
just
hear
leave
you
it. I'll
saying,
type it.
okay, thank you. I do hear you saying yes, and I think I heard her say that it's usually very successful. Um, yeah, Dot Day had a huge following, and so the nice part about that is that you sort of tap into an existing community of art educators. Yeah, so that's a line collector. And hey, guess what? You can use this game for free. So if you're interested about it, please ask us. Like I said, we would love to have more partners to build this game out and try some different things. And now I'm going to go a little bit into Mind the Gap, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jan to talk about the content management system. So Mind the Gap. So just to make sure I'm talking about something you've heard about, has anybody ever heard of either Apples to Apples or Cards Against Humanity? Do you want to put it just in the chat? Like, yeah, I've heard about this, or I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so I see that some people, yeah, some people have heard of this before. So this is a great game dynamic, and I've seen it work in a bunch of different ways. And it's very simple. You look at something, you find a caption, and somebody decides what the best caption is. Then you look at something else, rinse and repeat. It's very social. It can be a lot of fun. It includes closer looking. The judge rotates This particular game we found was good for large groups of people. I mean, good to have a team of up to five. And we could handle six different teams as it is right now. So that means you could have a school group of 30 kids, or maybe you could have a corporate group as they come in, and it could be larger than five people per group, but this is sort of a nice way to handle a large group of people. So you start by joining a team with your friends. So say you start Team Butterfly, and again, this is a mobile game. So this is a digital mobile game. Together, your team finds the specific artwork in the galleries as instructed. This was the first one from the Aargauer Kunstmuseum. And when you find it, you say, hey, I found it. The team picks that particular round's judge, and the way that you find a judge is pretty arbitrary. Right, hand the phone. The judge is the tallest person on this team. The judge is the newest person on this team. The judge is the person with the purple beard. I mean, that's very specific, but you never know. Because Scott is always the judge, right? But yeah, we stole that from Country Dog Gentleman, which was a really great game at SF MoMA years ago, where they had this really lovely dynamic where it was like, hand your phone to the person wearing the most blue, hand your phone to the person whose birthday is the soonest, and that sort of kept people from hoarding the technology. So whoever becomes the judge, non-judge players are given a prompt, respond with their favorite answer. If you don't like your cards, you exchange them for new cards. If you look very closely, you can see blank in the background of the painting. And so remember, this is our painting. If you look very closely, you can see something in the background of the painting. So the museum did have to come up with some prompts for their chosen artworks. They came up with really wonderful prompts. And then, of course, the cards are random. So if you look very closely at that piece of art, you can see in the background Vincent van Gogh's ear, or the color red, or a black square, or doomsday scenes. Discard and draw new cards if you don't like any of those options. If you're the judge, then you wait for the players to submit. Each player they will show up right here, and you're just standing in the gallery together. It's very social, and you're asking your players to defend their choices. Why do you think you see the color red in the background of this painting? Explain yourself. And then at the end, the judge awards a point. Again, this is a prototype. These prototypes are very far along. Remember, we've got 30 days, and this is what we came out with. You know, this is the mobile networked game that came out in 30 days, which is pretty impressive. But if we'd had more time and a little more budget, we probably would have had some sort of scoring system. As it is, we just took the scoring system offline, right? Yeah, like Scott's like, nah, yeah, it's not necessary, right? You can be like, you get a point, and it does almost the exact same thing. I think when we tested this, we gave out like little coins or cards or something.
Can you talk a bit slowlier? Sorry, Kilian.
Oh, of course.
Slower, sorry.
Yes, no, I'm so sorry. I'm
No.
from Boston, so I speak like a machine gun.
No, it's good. Until it travels to Switzerland, something. So, thank you.
Of course. But actually, now I am going to hand it over to Jan to talk a little bit about the newest version of Mind the Gap and the content management system. So why don't I stop the share, and Jan, you can take over from here.
Yes, just a moment. I'm going to share my screen.
Sounds good.
Hope that you can see that. Can you see something?
Yes.
If you can.
So you see the violet screen of the beginning of Mind the Gap as it is now.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
a remark, we had to take back colors very much because we are assuming that all these museums that are going to use the game, they have their particular CDCI. And of course, it would be a huge task to always adapt it to every single museum. However, you can add your logo at the top so that there is an identification, of course, in terms of which museum you are playing it at. And I'm just showing a few screens. There are a few things that we actually changed to the game logic based on feedback that we received. But you see that it looks familiar. We have the groups still there. You can choose the groups, and then yeah, you are led to the individual artworks, and you get some information as to how it all works. We have a timer, by the way. It's under time pressure that you need to answer, which makes it also a little bit more thrilling. And then you choose your answer, and then you can choose the best answer. I made screenshots just on my own, so you know there's just one answer right now. But the logic, of course, then you see all the answers that were given in the group. Then you can see the best answer that was chosen, and you move on to the next artwork. In the game, there are the rules, so that if anybody forgets how this is played, you can always call the rules and remind yourself of yeah, how the game works. And of course, as you said, there is a scoring mechanism in the background. So in the end, you will have a list of yeah, the people and how they performed, and you will have some confetti coming down. And then what we also did is we thought that it would be very good to share actually the experience in any kind of way. I mean, you can share it maybe in WhatsApp, you can share it on your social media channels, whatever. And for that, we have a sharing function now. And it takes like the top 3 answers of the entire group that was playing, not of individuals, and you can share them with other people and add your own comment, and then choose the channel you actually want and spread it, hopefully to many people, so you can receive it, for instance, in WhatsApp, or you can see it on the social media channels. Just very briefly, I mean, probably the most important change we made based on feedback was that we don't have one judge. Actually, all members of the group judge. And so the best of all people who judge, it makes also the story a little bit simpler when you play it. That's how then the scoring comes together in the end. And as you have maybe seen in the scoring, you will see all the groups that play overall, not just in your group. So that gives also some sort of a group competition. Who wins in the end? To which group does the person belong? So they can be proud of that as well. So that's just very briefly to mainly show you what the game looks like. But now I switch. I need to stop. Where do I stop? Oh, here. And I go to another screen, which is this one. Can you see that too? This is the content management system. So the idea behind is, of course, that you know, the individual museums are as independent as possible when they manage their version of the game. Of course, what we need to do always when a museum comes to Freisicht, we need to set it up initially. So, you know, the story about the logo, you have your own URL then in the end, etc., etc. But from then, it should be completely self-sufficient. You should not need us anymore. And what you see here is the screen where actually you can load the artworks that you are going to use in your game. So I will do that now, just that you see how simple it actually is. So I go on the plus symbol you see at the top right corner, and then I enter project name. So it is probably the Omitest here. Then I have it, you see it here, and I can edit it. And then I can add the artworks. I select the paintings that I actually want to upload. I do it. Here you have your artworks, and then you can start to edit these individual artworks. You have 3 tabs here. So you can add, of course, the details of the artwork because it will show up in the game, and you would like to give people the details about the artwork. Then you have a tab questions, and that's where you add the questions. I will come to that in a minute. And you have trivias. The idea is when you are playing in a group and people answer and people have to judge, but not everybody does it at the exact same time. So there's some waiting time always. And to use this waiting time in a reasonable way, we thought that we would show some trivia about the individual artwork or the artists, but really short sentences, nothing very complicated and nothing you actually have to remember if you don't want. But that you are not waiting and you staring at a boring screen. That's the idea behind. So you can add any trivia you want to the individual artworks. And then the questions. How do you set up a question? You go again on the plus sign, and yeah, let's write the question. Before the artist made this painting, he must have seen. And now to make the gap, you just write gap. And then I have to say which kind of categories apply. So when I write this sentence, what is actually working in the context? It can be, for instance, it's in German here because it's our version. For instance, objects in plural, that works. But objects with adjectives works as well. Maybe a person, plural, person singular. Where is it? Oh, here. Okay. So now I create the question. So what it does now, it sets up a question that belongs to that particular artwork, and it knows exactly what kind of categories of words are actually fitting in that gap. Because that's what we will need later on when we create the groups of words that are applicable to the game. But now I've set up a question. And you go through all the artworks and you set up your questions in the exact same way. And that's the way how they show with this gap here. And you just interrupt me if you have any questions, if something is not clear. So basically, that's all about the artwork that you need. At the top here on the right-hand side, you see a menu. And in this menu, you can now also manage the other important aspects of the game. So you need, of course, this pool of answers that we were connecting to in terms of the categories. Here are really the answers themselves, all answers that you would like to add. And they must be put into a category, of course, so that it knows, this word is actually a person in singular, or it's an interjection, or it is an object with an adjective, and so on. So there is a huge list now in our game, 653 we have until now, and it's really needed. You need a lot of these answers because otherwise the variability is not given. So you need to quite put in some work. And what I can tell you is actually we didn't want to make this work. And so we invited school classes to participate. And the idea behind is not because we are lazy. The idea is because it needs to be the language of, exactly this this age. So I think it would be quite a mistake if I tried to find out what kind of answers they would find funny then in the end. So they do it themselves. All right, so here are the answers, the individual answers, and you can put them into a category. And then you need to have the categories. At the beginning, we had them fixed, but then we thought, well, if especially other languages join, they need to be able to manage these categories as well. Because in English, probably you don't need the exact same categories as you would need in German. And in Italian, I'm sure it's again different. So you can manage these categories as well. And that's basically all that you need. You need the categories, you need the answers, you need the questions, you need the artworks, and that's it. So it is really simple. What you also have is, if you're interested, then in the end, analytics. So you can analyze in the end, how was it actually used? And what I find quite funny is that you then can also see per artwork what were the answers that were actually chosen. And then you can, based on that, you might do some adaptations to the game. If you see that certain answers are very popular, of course you keep them. If certain answers never ever show up, you might want to think about changing them. So it's just also a help to manage the game and to manage the content you have in your game. Yeah, and that was a very brief tour. I hope it was understandable. Of course, a little bit complex in such a short time, but it's actually very easy to manage it. So that's it. If you have questions.
Thanks so much. It's also as the meeting, we've seen this also as the first time. This was the first time, so this is amazing. Maybe I can just add what the connection is between the prototype and what was just introduced by Jan. So for the past 2 years, in this specific case, the Aargauer Kunsthaus and other museums developed the prototype that Helian showed. So the code for the prototype is on GitHub and is accessible to everyone. So if a museum has a programming professional, they could theoretically, use it and make their own versions out of it, or you ask Fablevision or someone else to help you with it. And it was possible because our foundation paid the production costs of all these prototypes, which ranged from 5,000 per game to 15,000 Swiss francs or dollars, roughly. So we collectively, and the museums invested their resources, their staff resources, to develop the game. So we collectively put investments in it to develop the game, I think up to 70%. So the rest of the development is much smaller. So the company where Jan works, also they developed a full version out of it, so that other museums, it's not, so what he just showed is not a prototype anymore, it's a full game. So any museum can easily, even without programming knowledge, each educator could do drag and drop with this. And then we helped also to fund this. And so the part of the funding was also that 5 licenses, because of course Freisicht is a studio with a business model. So up to 5 museums can have the license for free for 2 years, because we want this idea to spread that resources are shared among museums, and that the barrier to enter these games is always cost. So yeah, this is just to make it easier. So anyone who is interested from next year to try to implement it in the museum is very welcome to contact us. And even after the 5 free licenses, it's about $1,200 Swiss francs to get the license and set it up and run it for a year. So, and this is much different than a museum starting to develop their own game, which quickly goes from 30,000 to 50,000 Swiss francs or dollars, which under current circumstances is, it's becoming increasingly difficult also to.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that Project AMI has identified, and we, sort of touched on this before, but again, when you say something is open source and we're like, go ahead, GitHub, go fish, right? Like it's really hard to actually know what that means. Like, what is GitHub? How do I get into GitHub? And so we're creating this community of support, both museums, museum educators, and like studios like Freisicht and Fablevision, where you can say, okay, Freisicht, I really want to use this game. How do I do it? And you can literally talk to Jan, and Jan will get you set up so you're not on your own. And for the first 5 licenses, that's something that Project AMI can cover, or the Max Kohler Foundation can cover. And even after that, once you're set up, it's like $500 a year just to keep it going. So the costs are way less than it would cost to build it anew, as both Fablevision and Freisicht are aware. It costs a lot more than $1,200 to build one of these guys. So good time to share resources. All right. I think that's all we've got. Should we stop recording and chat?